operational plans to the festive season or festive period. I'm honored today to officially introduce the BMA Commissioner, Dr. Michael Masiapato, whose leadership, vision, and expertise will guide us as a BMA in achieving our mission of enhancing border security and management across the country. Dr. Masiapato has so much experience in the environment. He has been working in most of the security structures, which include the police, the defense, and even the financial intelligence center. So he brings a vast experience in this environment. Without wasting any time, I would like then to call upon the Commissioner, the Executive for the BMA, Dr. Michael Masiapato. Thank you.
The Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Major General David Chilembe, retired. The Assistant Commissioners, as well as the Deputy Assistant Commissioners present, the entire border management community, members of the media, and South Africa at large, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Border Management Authority, we have convened this media briefing today to unveil our festive season plan covering the border activities through the exit leg through December of 2024 and return leg through January 2025. As a country, we are currently in the middle of the campaign for the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. In line with this initiative, the Border Management Authority is committed to ensuring that our ports of entry are not exploited for any form of violence as well as criminal activities, including human trafficking and or smuggling that target any of the vulnerable groups, particularly women and children. To strengthen our efforts, we have reinforced our partnership with the Department of Social Development, in which we refer matters that involve minors or any vulnerable groups identified during our port operations conducted in any of our 71 ports of entry or border law enforcement areas. Today, we gather here as South Africa is confronted with a range of complex border-related challenges, which include issues of illegal migration, sophisticated cross-border crimes, and the smuggling of illicit goods into the country, amongst others. All these realities continue to strain our meager resources, undermine our national security, economic growth, as well as the zeal for the realization of regional economic integration. It is for this reason that South Africa and its neighboring countries need to establish a robust and integrated resourced border management platform free from criminal activities. Just to recap, the Border Management Authority is responsible for the facilitation and management of the legitimate movement of people and goods through our 71 ports of entry, of which 52 are land port of entry, 10 international airports, as well as 9 seaports. In this case, our responsibility include the management of immigration functions, agricultural biosecurity, environmental biosecurity, port health, as well as general border law enforcement functions, including access control into the ports of entry. These functions extend to include the border law enforcement area, which is defined as 10 kilometers inside the internationally recognized borderline. As we enter this festive season, jurisdictions across the world experience a significant increase in the movement of people and goods at their ports of entry and border law enforcement area. South Africa is not immune to this reality. It is on this basis that the BMA had to coordinate and manage the development of a comprehensive plan for implementation by various stakeholders in the border management environment. As for context, the plan consists of 4 phases, and those are the planning phase, which started on the 20th of September 2024, the execution phase, which will start on the 10th of December 2024, consisting of both the exit as well as the return legs. The demobilization phase, which will be implemented on the 15th of January 2025, followed by the sustenance phase, which will then commence on the 16th of January 2025 until the end of the year. The plan has been endorsed by key structures that are critical to border management, and those are the Border Technical Committee of 10 Directors Generals and or heads of entities, the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management, made up of 10 ministers under the chairship of Dr. Leon Schreiber as the Minister of Home Affairs, as well as the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs under the chairship of Mr. Musa Chaban. Operationally, this plan is supported by the National Joint Operations and Intelligence Center, commonly known as the structures commonly known as the NAT joints, under the chairship of Lieutenant General Tebello Musekeli, as well as the Provincial Joint Operations and Intelligence Structures, commonly known as the PROV joints, across the 9 provinces. Just for historical context, during the December-January festive season, in the pre-COVID period of 2019-2020, we facilitated about 6.3 million people across our various ports. The numbers decreased in the 2020-2021 as well as 2021-2022 period to about 1.6 million due to COVID restrictions. However, in the 2022-2023 period, we recovered to about 4 million people. The recovery continued in 2023-2024 to about 5 million people. So this time around, we anticipate a full recovery to the pre-COVID numbers of more than 6 million people. Over the years, our top 10 ports of entry which facilitate the majority of the people has always been OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg, Beitbridge Land Port of Entry to Zimbabwe and the rest of the continent, Libombo Port of Entry to Mozambique, Caledon-Spoort, Fixburg and Maseru Bridge Land Ports of Entry to Lesotho, Cape Town International Airport in the Western Cape, Oshuk Land Port of Entry to Eswatini, as well as Kofontein and Groblersdal Bridge Land Ports of Entry to Botswana. Therefore, during the development of this plan, this historical trend has been taken into consideration, especially when considering areas requiring the deployment of additional resources. Now, during the planning phase, we, amongst other activities, conducted extensive interjurisdictional discussions with our 6 immediate neighboring countries of Lesotho, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Eswatini, as well as Botswana, in order to streamline border processes and coordinate our work modalities for this period. As a result, we have agreed to adjust operating hours at some of the key ports which do not operate on a 24-hour basis. To this end, the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber, has approved 4 requests, our requests, to extend the operating hours at the following ports. In terms of Groblersdal Bridge to Botswana, the normal operating hours is between 6 and 10, and we have requested an extension until 12 midnight. That is on the 13th, on the 14th, on the 20th, as well as the 21st of December 2024. In terms of Swartkofontein to Botswana, normal operating hours is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have then requested to start earlier at 6 a.m. and then close at 2000 hours, that is 8 p.m. That is on the 20th to the 24th of December, as well as the 27th to the 31st of December, as well as the 6th and the 13th of January 2025. In terms of Kosi Bay to Mozambique, the normal operating hours is 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. We have then requested to start 2 hours earlier at 6, and then we will be closing an hour later at 6 p.m. That is on the 15th of December 2024, as well as on the 15th of January 2025. In terms of Mahamba port of entry to Eswatini, normal operating hours is 7 until 10, and we are then going to close at midnight on the 23rd as well as the 24th of December 2024. In terms of Gibis Reef, also to Eswatini, normal operating hours is 7 until 8 p.m. We are then going to close at 10 p.m. on the 23rd as well as the 24th of December 2024. In terms of Mananga port of entry, also to Eswatini, normal operating hours is 7 until 6 p.m. We are then going to be closing 2 hours later at 2000 hours on the 20th as well as the 24th of December 2024. In terms of Sunny Pass to Lesotho, the normal operating hours is 6 until 6 p.m. and we have requested to close later at 8 o'clock p.m. on the 21st as well as the 24th of December. In terms of Caledon Sport, port of entry to Lesotho, normal operating hours is 6 until 10. We are then going to close at midnight. That is on the 13th, on the 20th, as well as the 23rd of December 2024. Also on the 2nd, as well as the 5th of January 2025. And of course, in terms of the 24th of December for Caledon Sport, we are going to be opening for 24 hours. In terms of Van Rooyen's Gate, port of entry also to Lesotho, normal operating hours being 6 to 10. We will then close at midnight on the 13th, the 20th, the 23rd of December 2024, as well as the 2nd, as well as the 5th of January 2025. And of course, on the 24th of December, we will then operate on a 24-hour basis. In terms of Monontsha Pass, also to Lesotho, normal operating hours being 8 until 4. We will then be closing at 600 hours, 6 on the 2nd and the 5th of January 2025. And lastly, in terms of Peka Bridge, port of entry to Lesotho, normal operating hours being 8 to 4, we will also be closing at 6 p.m. That is on the 13th, on the 20th, on the 23rd, and the 24th of December 2024, including on the 2nd and the 5th of January 2025. Now, in addition to the extension of the operating hours, we will also be deploying about 69 additional personnel as the selected business ports of entry to assist with the delivery of services as well as the provision of technical support to the regular staff members at the ports. The deployment of the 400 junior border guards, which we did on the 1st of June 2024, in addition to the previously deployed 200 border guards, has improved the BMA's operational capacity by providing additional resources on the ground to strengthen security through streamlined access control into the ports of entry. In addition, the BMA has already deployed members of the coastal guards to the critical areas of the selected harbors for the implementation of border law enforcement functions. The BMA will also be collaborating with the Western Cape Provincial Government as well as the City of Cape Town to increase capacity at the Cape Town International Airport. This capacity augmentation will be made up of 60 peace officers as an addition to the immigration functions at the airport. On account of our memorandum of understanding which we have signed with Interpol, in this festive season, the respective port management committees will collaborate with Interpol as well as members of the SAPS, especially in the implementation of some joint operations to combat various with the provision of additional infrastructure such as temporary lightings, ablution facilities, special temporary barricades, and JoJo tankers for the provision of additional water within the ports as well as the corridors. Further, additional ICT technicians will be deployed at prioritized ports of entry to provide direct support to our movement control system. In this regard, additional remote support will be provided by SARS technicians together with the team from the Department of Home Affairs. During the execution phase, our focus will be the delivery of an integrated, effective and efficient processes at the ports of entry where only legitimate people and goods will be allowed to enter and exit South Africa. To achieve this, ports of entry and the vulnerable segments of the borderline will be adequately guarded to intercept any transgressors. With Operation Valamgodi unfolding, the border guards remain vigilant and prepared to intercept the deported illegal miners and deter them from re-entering the country illegally. In this period, we have also intensified measures to detect and seize illicit goods such as narcotics, as well as stolen vehicles. We therefore want to warn all travelers to desist from committing any acts of criminality around the port of entry as well as the border law enforcement areas, as they will be detected, arrested, and then deported. Considering the current challenges of food poisoning and the subsequent instructions received from His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, as the BMA, we have issued an operational instruction to all the ports of entry to intensify efforts to detect as well as intercept any attempt to illegally import the organophosphate pesticide, especially aldicap, which is a banned substance in South Africa, as well as tebifos, which is a similar harmful substance posing significant risk to human life. The instructions include increased vigilance as well as guidelines for recognizing the substance, common physical characteristics, packaging methods, and potential smuggling concealment tactics. As such, the handling protocols have been given to our biosecurity experts for implementation across all the ports of entry. On the corridors leading to our land ports of entry, the management of traffic will be done in collaboration with the Road Traffic Management Corporation, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, and the respective traffic authorities in the relevant provinces. Historically, traffic congestion have been our common problem during this period, particularly on the N1 corridor towards Beitbridge, port of entry to Zimbabwe and the continent, and also on the N4 corridor towards Libombo, port of entry to Mozambique. As a result, there are specific traffic management contingencies which will be implemented for Beitbridge as well as Libombo in particular. This includes the implementation of targeted process flows through the segregation of passenger vehicles, taxis, buses, and cargo conveyances with clear signage, barricades, and marshalling activities. We would like to urge all drivers to observe all traffic laws and comply with instructions from traffic officers when directed to certain channels towards the port of entry. On immigration matters, we would like to implore all travelers leaving or entering South Africa to ensure that all their travel documents are in order. This is to avoid any unnecessary delays at the ports of entry. As a result, as required by international protocols, all travelers should be in possession of a valid machine-readable passport and a valid visa where applicable. Furthermore, travelers are reminded that their passports should have at least one empty page in order to enable the BMA immigration team members to accordingly stamp the passport as required. This message is also relevant during the return leg in January, as all travelers are expected to present themselves at the designated ports of entry to enter South Africa. As for those wishing to cross the border using financed vehicles, they should be in possession of a letter from the financing institution allowing them to be able to exit the vehicle out of the country. As for parents wishing to travel with their minor children, they are reminded to carry the child's unabridged birth certificate, unless the child's details are endorsed in the parent's passport. In cases where one parent is traveling with a child, in the absence of another parent, a consent letter from the absent parent granting permission to the other parent to exit the country with the child is required. This requirement is mainly applicable to South Africans intending to exit the country with children. Considering the expected high volumes in this festive season, we would like to appeal to all travelers to plan their travel early and exercise patience on the road through the ports of entry. During the return leg in January of 2025, we would like to send a stern warning to all individuals who might be planning to enter South Africa illegally, that the border guards working together with members of the South African National Defence Force will be waiting for them. Whilst awaiting the delivery of our drones as the BMA, in this festive season, we have forged a partnership with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, which will be deploying their drones to assist us with enhancing the level of border security and domain awareness, especially in the problematic vulnerable segments. Drone operations will be supported by mobile reaction units, which will be situated at or closer to the ports of entry to allow the quick reaction and apprehension of illegal migrants and other cross-border criminals. To this end, the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Leon Schreiber, will be visiting Libombo Port of Entry on the 11th of December 2024 to observe the deployment of the drone capability in the border management environment. Still on immigration matters, we have also received notification from the Department of Home Affairs that the Minister of the Department, in this regard, all ports of entry have been notified of this development in order to ensure the correct processing of the ZEP holders across the ports of entry. On port health matters, we need to emphasize that all arriving of any communicable or infectious diseases to the country. The travelers arriving from yellow fever endemic areas are required to have valid yellow fever certificates. These requirements also apply to travelers who will be in transit for more than 12 hours within our airports. For the outgoing travelers, it is always important to check with the relevant consulate or embassy of the country you are traveling to in order to ensure familiarity to the travel requirements of the country you are visiting. Furthermore, conveyance especially aircrafts from yellow fever and malaria parts of Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal are endemic to malaria in South Africa. Therefore, in order to prevent and minimize mosquito bites, travelers are advised to use insect repellent, bed nets, wear long-sleeve clothes and socks, especially after sunset. In this regard, travelers can use anti-malaria medicine such as chemoprophylaxis where prescribed. As the BMA, we would like to urge travelers presenting signs of illness to present themselves or report to the BMA Port Health Clinic on arrival at the port of entry, or else they can visit their nearest health facilities or their private doctor for consultation. The Mpox risk classification in South Africa is currently moderate. However, travelers should avoid close contact with individuals who exhibit symptoms of Mpox, such as skin lesions or muscle aches. Currently, there is no Mpox vaccine in South Africa. Therefore, travelers are encouraged to remain vigilant against Mpox disease. Travelers wishing to carry health-related goods such as food, medicine, hazardous substances and or cosmetics are advised to ensure that they make necessary declarations at the customs counter at the port of entry. As for travelers transporting human remains, including ashes, they must be in possession of the requisite import and export permit issued by the National Department of Health. Otherwise, they will not be processed. On agricultural species as well as foreign pests associated with plants or plant products, animal or animal products, or other regulated goods from other countries. Therefore, travelers are urged to take caution on their luggage in order to ensure that they do not unconsciously introduce alien invasive species into the country. In this regard, travelers coming into South Africa should avoid bringing meat, fruit, honey, or any other regulated goods. These kinds of regulated goods can only be imported into South Africa through a proper import permit issued by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and should be declared with the BMA agricultural and or environmental biosecurity inspectors at the ports of entry before entering the country. In fact, travelers should be aware that BMA agricultural and biosecurity inspectors do conduct luggage inspections at the port of entry, including with the use of sniffer dogs or canine units to ensure compliance with the movement of agricultural products. Therefore, prohibited products will be confiscated and destroyed, or else will be returned to the country of origin. However, should anyone decide to disregard the law, he or she will face imprisonment or a fine of up to 20,000 rands. Regarding the update on the development at Libombo Port of Entry, it is important to note that in the past week into the past weekend, we saw an escalation of demonstrations which continue to disrupt port operations, particularly between 9 a.m. as well as 4 p.m. Since the start of the protest in the Rasen Garcia Port of Entry on the Mozambican side, we can indicate that there's not been any incident of protest that has affected infrastructure or human resources on the South African side. The deployment of the Mozambican security forces on the ground on the corridor has maintained a steady posture, with preventative measures being employed to mitigate the risk. With the festive season fast approaching, we will continue to be guided by our Mozambican counterpart on daily operational activities affecting their side. As of this morning, the current status at Libombo Port of Entry is stable, and we are processing both travelers as well as cargo as required. However, we continue to monitor the situation on the Mozambican side. We continue to interact with our counterpart on the Mozambican side, and therefore, should interruptions arise, we should be able to reassess the activities and the port processes that we do at Libombo on our side. During the demobilization phase of the festive period, which will then be done on the 15th of January 2025, however, the respective port management committee will consolidate the gains of this work during this festive period and therefore implement a sustenance phase from the 16th of January 2025 until the rest of the year. This is meant to improve our border operations and ensure the sustainable provisions as well as the consolidation of border management functions going forward. Procurement has advanced with AMSCO for the procurement of drones, patrol vessels, for the coastal guards, body cams, and other crucial and critical tools of trade to enable the border guards to do their work better. In conclusion, we would like to reflect on some of the key interventions that has been done by the Border Management Authority. Since the beginning of this year, the multidisciplinary anti-corruption teams enhanced their vigilance to detect officials who tend to process travelers or individuals who do not present themselves before the immigration officers as required by the Immigration Act. Therefore, Just in this financial year, around 3 BMA immigration officers has been given precautionary suspension, while 7 officials were dismissed and 43 cases of misconduct are at various stages of the disciplinary processes. As the BMA, we have adopted a zero tolerance on corrupt tendencies within the organization. This is demonstrated by our collaboration with the Special Investigating Unit, commonly known as the SIU, through the establishment of the Border Management and Immigration Anti-Corruption Forum, which seeks to deter corruption and unethical conduct within the port of entry and stop about 410,000 individuals attempting to enter the country illegally since the deployment of the first cohort of the border guards on the 15th of July in 2022. In this regard, the majority of those who were arrested, they got fingerprinted, they were declared undesirable for a period of 5 years, and they were deported. Further, we have been able to detect about 312 high-valued vehicles which were meant to illegally exit the country to other jurisdictions in the continent. In this regard, all of these matters were handed over to the detectives of the South African Police Services for further investigation. As the Border Management Authority, we would like to wish everyone a very pleasant festive season. We are at your service, securing borders for development. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Masia Pato, for that detailed statement. Members of the media, it is now time to engage on the question and answer session. And please remember, as protocol, you need to indicate your name and the media house that you are representing before you pose your question to us. The first round of questions will start in this room, and then we'll go to online platforms where we'll engage media that is on those platforms. You can go ahead.
This is Monge Zikoko from Eyewitness News. It's a two-part question, but the first one would be the collaboration with the social department. You made mention quite early in your statement, Commissioner, that there's going to be a collaborative effort between the two departments to try and mitigate the smuggling of human beings and human trafficking. So I just want you to expand on that particular point. And then towards the end of the statement, you also spoke about the repercussions that are faced by corrupt officials within the BMA. So maybe if you could just give us an indication of what the repercussions could be. So maybe an expansion on that, and how many, out of all those investigations, you said that various stages. So maybe just an outline of where they're going to be in the next couple of years and what other mitigation strategies would you have around those. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mongezi. Heidi?
France. Progressive Independent Talk Radio TV. Dr. Masia Pato, in last week, towards the weekend, I was in Musina around the Bay Bridge borderline, and I was there with the SANGF on their patrol. So, in that trip or in that visit, we identified a number of illegal border crossing points, problematic, as the SNGF termed them. So what is it that the BMA is doing to minimize the illegal crossings of undocumented persons, and also the smuggling of goods during this festive season? And also, how much of a challenge are these damaged fencing along the border lines to the BMA's border management. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question.
It's Heidi Jockas from ENCA. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions also for my colleagues that are currently at the various borders, because ENCA has a focus today. But it's also linked to the border fence. There have been many issues around the standard of that fence and how many are able to just literally walk through, and the conditions of it. How many people get through that gate, through that fence illegally, and why has it not been addressed? If you can maybe just, if you have the numbers of how many people actually end up coming through that fence. And then also, in the past week, 4 Malawian nationals were arrested for the contravention of the Immigration Act, and also dealing with illicit goods to the value of 66 million. And then over the weekend, Zimbabwean nationals were involved in a robbery in Middleburg. And these are just two examples. How much does the entry of improperly documented people compromise the country's security, and how much worse can it actually get? Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Doctor. My name is Gert van der Wester from Netwerk 24. I just want to know, hundreds of South Africans usually go on holiday over the December period to Mozambique. What would your advice to them be with the ongoing unrest there? Should they make other plans? Should they keep an eye open for your information, or what should they do?
And we'll take the last question.
Veronica Mokgadi from Newsroom Africa. I think from my side, what I just want to get clarity on is, especially in regards to the extended operational hours for the border post, is this sort of a plan to see more increased movement to avoid the issue of congestion that we see? How will we deal with that on a resource level? Do we have the people to man those borders, especially during those times and those hours? And while, of course, you also mentioned, Commissioner, the top 10 ports of entry that more resources will be deployed to, what are we doing about some of those other borders that are not part of the top 10? How do we ensure that people don't take advantage of the busyness that we're expecting at those central ports of entry? And then perhaps maybe one last question was just on, I'm forgetting it, but I will bring it back when I remember.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Commissioner.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, colleagues. The commissioners are here to respond to the questions. I will just give an overall, and the colleagues will then come through to reflect on some of the issues, especially where we really want some bit of complex technical details. But let me start with what Monges is asking about the collaboration with the Department of Social Development. Firstly, I want to indicate that as the Border Management Authority, going into the future, we should be able to have capacity in terms of the employment of social workers in our respective ports of entry as BMA employees, so that they will be able to provide a first-hand psychosocial support in instances where we find people at distress in our ports of entry. That is within the context of children, within the context of women, and all of those. So that is the future state in a way. But unfortunately, where we are now, as you will know, we are still, to be resourced financially per se as the organization. We do not have that capacity. So during this particular period, what we do is we then collaborate with our colleagues from the Department of Social Development, both nationally but also at the level of the province, and have those social workers on the ground, so that as soon as we intercept or we actually get confronted with that kind of a situation, they are able to address the situation. Under normal circumstance, meaning outside the festive period, in those particular instances, we will then take those people to where they are as social development and actually activate them on a case-by-case basis. But during this period, we try to have capacity so that we are able to deal with the issues. Now, when we talk about what is it that their presence on the ground is going to be helping in the context of handling the issues of trafficking, as it were. So mainly, if you can really check, the collaboration in this instance is more in a reactive context where we would have intercepted people, as it were. But in terms of dealing with the overall issues relating to human trafficking syndicates, smuggling syndicates, and all of those, we do work with our colleagues in the Hawks, the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigations in the police, who we then refer some of these matters to them for the overall investigation. As you will know, they have that mandate to do investigative work and be able to assist us in the dealing with the people who are actually driving this kind of activities. So that is more on the preventative side. But in terms of the collaboration with social development per se, it is within the context of addressing a situation on the ground. I think if you were with us during the 2023-2024 period, you will remember that we had incidences in Beitbridge, and we did hand over those people to the Department of Social Development. During the Good Friday period, we were at Grobler's Bridge, and we also had incidences there, and we did the same. That is why we are saying we have firmed up this relationship, and we should be able to continue to work together. In terms of the repercussions that you are referring to, Mongezi, we are really taking these issues of officials who actually get compromised very seriously. As we have indicated in the statement, we have signed a protocol with the Special Investigating Unit and established a forum where we are then going to be using it for the purposes of getting the reports in the environment about officials that might be doing things outside the law and be able to clean, as it were. And I think the Assistant Commissioner Dubazana is here. He is our head of HR, corporate affairs, so he is going to reflect on some of those issues. In terms of where we are, we have just spoken about the issues, but he will try to put more meat into that. In terms of what Franz is saying, you see, Franz, to be honest with you, the work that the BMA is supposed to be doing is very big. And if we can be honest, to ourselves, just in understanding the work that the BMA is supposed to be doing, you juxtapose that work against the capacity we have. I mean, you will realize that we are literally, in a way, a bit of a drop in the ocean. Sometimes as we talk in the work that we do as the BMA, some think that this BMA is probably seriously capacitated. We talk about 600 border guards. If we talk about the law enforcement team, exactly the team that must go to the various vulnerable segments that has been identified by the members of the South African National Defence Force. You are very much right. You will remember just in December there was an incident where we put our effort on the western side of Beitbridge, and some people went on the eastern side of Beitbridge and they were literally saying, but where is BMA? It's just because the capacity we carry in relation to the work, it is very much huge. So what you have observed is a fact. So what do we basically do? That is within the context of the work we do in relation to what the SANDF does. So the SANDF will do the patrollings, high mobility as it is called. So what we then do static deployments on the various areas. But in as much as we do static deployments, we also respond when people go into the other areas, as it were. And the reality of it is when you move to the other area gets open and all of that. That is why we keep emphasizing the need for the procurement of the drones, which should then actually be deployed on air to give us that capacity to be able to see which areas are we actually being exposed at and be able to respond as per the challenges, as it were. Currently, we don't have that capacity. As we have indicated in the statement, we are in the process of procuring those with the AMSCO. It just takes a bit of time because it is very complicated supply chain related processes. And of course, once that is done, we should be able to deal with that as it were. Now, the question you're asking, Franz, is a very serious one about the damage that this particular, or basically you're saying the damage in terms of the border fence. You see, that is a very unfortunate reality. We are fairly literally taking care of the borderline or the vulnerable areas where there is not any barrier, as it were. And I think we all know about, if we talk about Bait Breed, for instance, we know about the border fence that side, and we know the fact that that issue had been investigated by the SIU. We know the fact that the DPWI, which is the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, had been trying to get the money back. The issue has been to the tribunal and all of those issues. So from where we sit as the BMA is that once all those processes are done, they should be able to get a service provider to assist us in terms of getting that fence reinstalled, and a proper one. So that is basically what we can say in as far as this issue is concerned. But the reality of it, based on your question, it makes our job difficult. And that is a reality. And by the way, in other areas, there's not even a fence in the first place. I mean, that is, if you go to Lesotho, the border line or the border demarcation is actually Caledon River, as it were. And if you have been there, you will basically understand that it is a very difficult situation. But at the end of the day, we have to do the work with the capacity we have, and we hope that as we get capacitated, we should be able to have the broader impact, as it were. And that touches on the question raised by Heidi. You see, Heidi, you're asking a very difficult question, because that particular question is not, it cannot be answered. Your question is how many people really get through these fences? And I suppose your question is on those that we are not intercepting. So those that we are not intercepting, it means we have not intercepted them and we want to know. So when we talk about 410,000 that we have intercepted, and we are counting it from the first deployment of the border guards, that is the 410 that we intercepted. Among those 410 were intercepted in those vulnerable segments of the borderline. But we know that is not the only people. There are those that we did not intercept. And that is why, again, the issue of the drone will be able to give us footage to have a broader understanding of how many people are we actually talking about. But at the same time, I think we must also be very much honest and say there are a lot of people that are already in the country illegally that actually entered this country before the establishment of the BMA and before our existence. But unfortunately, because we are here, we cannot necessarily keep emphasizing that, because it will give an impression that we don't want to take responsibility. That is why we even say, when it comes to the issue of the illegal miners, we say, as they get arrested, as they get deported, our role is to make sure that they don't return. Is it easy? It's not easy, given, again, the capacity that we have, but we try our best. I can give a very practical example, Heidi, on this particular point. If you remember some time back, the Basotho nationals used to lead in as much as illegal mining is concerned. So when this operation, which now is gaining much momentum in the media, the operation started last year, by the way, Operation Valamgodi. We had been part of it as the JCPS cluster ourselves. And in that basis, when they actually got deported, we intensified the deployment to make sure that they do not return. So if I can give a typical example with the Basotho ones, we intensified the deployment in the Free State, with Lesotho, Eastern Cape, with Lesotho, KZN with Lesotho. And with our interceptions, you can be able to see that now the majority is no longer the Basotho nationals, but it is now the Mozambicans as well as the Zimbabweans, which means it's another effort that we need to put more effort in those particular spaces when they get deported, to make sure that they don't return. Again, it's not an easy thing, but we keep trying in terms of the capacity that we have, as it were. Now, the issue of the examples that we are raising, Heidi, in terms of the Malawians, in terms of the Mozambicans, and the impact this actually has, I think one thing that we can fairly agree on is, if we are not going to be able to get it right in as far as border management is concerned, the majority of the issues with the examples that we have cited, unfortunately, they are going to be continuing. It is for that reason that we should be able to, again, get some bit of more capacity to can be able to intensify the work in the border space, so that, simply put, if we can then succeed to get illegality into the country, we will then be able to start having some better flow as well as some better traction going forward. For now, the impact, I think, is fairly visible, and everybody is able to understand that. I was talking to the Commissioner of Correctional Services, who actually indicated that although they are sitting at something like 43% overcrowding in prisons, over 18,000 of those people are actually foreign nationals. And that is a demonstration of the numbers of the people that had actually been entering. But I mean, we know most of those others, because of them being I mean, Gert, you're asking a question beyond border management. So what we basically do, Gert, on your question, we are aware that there are a lot of South Africans who had been, booking holidays in Mozambique. But as the Border Management Authority, we are not able to give a full account of whether people can actually go into the country or not. So we believe that that is one area that can be properly covered by, for example, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. What we do is we stick on the work that we do, which is the port of entry and the border law enforcement area. The guidance that we used to give to South Africans, given the challenges at Libombo port of entry, was that we did not encourage South Africans to come through to Libombo port of entry because we knew its guidance has purely been based on Libombo. But we know there are other ports of entry into Mozambique. If you go up to the north, there is Pafuri. If you go up there, there is also Goriondo. You go up to KZN side, there is Kosi Bay. And in those particular ports, we have no challenges. So in terms of us, we are not able to give a full account whether people should go to Mozambique or not. And I think as a country, we should be able to give that guidance through the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, which I suppose the data will then be sought from the ambassador or the High Commissioner of South Africa in Maputo. We are not able to give a full account on that because we'll be going beyond our operational mandate. In terms of Veronica, the issue of the extended operation hours, do we expect an increase? Yes, indeed. I mean, if you look at the numbers that we have demonstrated, pre-COVID 2019, 2020, we're sitting at around 6.3 million. And then 2020, 2021, as well as 21, 2022, we then had a dip, which basically got to around 1.6. But in 2022 to 2023, we saw 4 million escalation. That was a 100%, 180% increase. And then last year, which is 23-24, we saw 5 million. From where we are sitting, we are anticipating a full recovery to pre-COVID numbers, which will be around 6 million. So on that basis, yes, indeed, we are expecting an increase in as far as the movement is concerned during this festive period, as it were. Now, your question is, although we have cited the 10 priority ports and the top 10 ports in the country, what are we going to be doing to the other ports, for instance, that are not part of the 10? Let's indicate that even in those particular ports, we've intensified efforts, although we did not necessarily bring additional capacity in those particular ports. And that is why we then had to do an extension in terms of operating hours. When we then give additional 3 hours, whether to start early or to close late, or in other instances, as I've indicated, to operate on a 24 hours, is to be able to enable our people to be able to handle the volumes that will be coming through into those particular areas. Unfortunately, in those other areas, we are not able to put additional human resources, primarily because we are just overstretched. And that is why you will see that the ports that are operating on a 24 hours anyway, which are our top ports, whether it's Beit Bridge, Libombo, Maseru Bridge, Fixback, in those particular ports we had to augment capacity, even if the ports are actually operating on a 24-hour basis. And that is on the basis of the capacity that we have and us to be able to make sure that the people are processed. So basically that is that, colleagues, in as far as the questions that has been raised. And I think Undade Dubazana should be able to indicate some of the work we are doing on the HR side to deal with people that are compromising the integrity of the organization, but also those that are compromising the territorial standing of the country by taking corruption or bribes and all of those things and all of that. So that is the essence. Thanks, Dubazana.
much, Commissioner. Let me first greet you, Commissioner of the BMA, Dr. Michael Masiapato. Greet the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, General Chilembe, my colleagues, staff members of the BMA, and our colleagues from the media. The question from, he's now out, on what the repercussions are we talking about when we're talking, we're taking action against those who find themselves on the other side of our books in terms of the work we are doing. The BMA has adopted the zero tolerance stance, and it is this zero tolerance stance that informs how effective the actions or the measures do we take in terms of dealing with that corruption. We mentioned that there are currently, over and above those that we have dismissed, that 7 only in this year. We're not mentioning those we dismissed before the 1st April, but those that we dismissed since the beginning of this financial year, those 7. Over and above those, we have 43 cases that we're currently finalizing, and we indicated, Commissioner has indicated in the statement that they are at various stages of disciplinary processes. These would include, and these numbers, they vary in terms of the progress made on them. So you cannot at any given time mention 20 are at investigation, 23 are at disciplinary processes and all that. So you look at that time when you're looking at how many are being finalized. So we have those 43. Some are at investigative stages. We're finalizing the investigations so that we have proper information when we take action. You know that in terms of the Labor Relations Act, even if somebody may be caught with anything, you must still comply with Labor Relations Act. Make sure that you have the investigation concluded and court that official the opportunity to state this case, that observing rules of administrative justice. However, they have lodged their appeal. So up until the appeal process has been finalized, you would not implement that sanction. So we have dealt with those cases, and we have also, as a way of intensifying our efforts and capacitating the BMA in order to deal with these cases or this conduct or misconduct, we've also filled the position of the Deputy Assistant Commissioner responsible for integrity management, who will also internally assist or make sure that the BMA move faster in ensuring that we detect internally, we detect all those who are found to be on the other side of our rule books. Lastly, we have, there was a question on the one that was involved in the robbery. That official was put on suspension, and remember, we also have to observe the rules of administrative justice by ensuring that we allow investigation to conclude, and once that conclusion, the investigation has reached that conclusion, then the process will move or progress to disciplinary inquiry that will be instituted against that official. But I can report now that investigation is at the advanced stage. When I checked with the investigating officer, the official who investigated, they've indicated that they are working on the report. And as soon as possible, the formal inquiry will ensue in order for us to ensure that we deal with that official. So basically, that was the only question that I had to deal with it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Tubazana. would like to check whether we have questions on the online platforms at this point. Thank you for that. I'm not sure whether I can open for the last round of questions in the room. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. Commissioner, you mentioned manpower. Please unpack that. Currently, you're talking about the 600 official police, allow me to say police officials at the border. How many do you need? Besides that, security, how many, the number of the total manpower that you need, but also resources. What resources are we talking about here? Now you have to rely on drones coming from somewhere, some other department, and that. But as DMA, to own that, please just explain as to what is it that you need. Thanks.
Kindly introduce yourself and the media house you represent.
Oh, sorry. Pizza Muramani, kindness.
Any other question?
Sorry, Veronica again from Vision Africa. Commissioner, could you also just touch on when you were giving an example of the efforts done to maintain that those that are in the country illegally, they are reported out. Can we just talk about how that process is working for the BMA? Are we able to keep up with the number of people that we have to hold in facilities, the number of deportations, especially given that influx that we're expecting in the festive season?
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, we'll ask the Commissioner to come and address those two questions.
Yeah, no, thanks, colleagues. Maybe, Pito, I'll address your matter, and hopefully it's not going to get me in trouble, but we'll indicate what we need with the view that it has been communicated to the environment. But I will reflect on that because it is something that has also been engaged even at the parliament level. So we'll talk to that. But let me start by Veronica's question, which is very much fundamental. Because you see, this question, Veronica, is very key because there are sometimes misunderstandings in terms of how the model of the BMA is supposed to work. And I want to just take this opportunity just to reflect a bit on that. The first point is, what the BMA's model, which we then call an integrated border management model with a single command and control, as you remember, it is a model where you exit multiple agencies that were deployed at the ports. But when you exit them, but you do the integration of the people, laterally. So you basically take the people and then they become part of the Border Management Authority. In this particular instance, as you will be aware, we took around 1,200 or so from Home Affairs. These are immigration officers. We took around 380, what we call agricultural biosecurity experts. Some call them environmental health practitioners, EHPs. And we took about 390 of the port health officials from the Department of Health. And we then had just around 20 or so environmental biosecurity experts from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. So at the point of integration, and I'm also coming a bit to touch on Pito's issue about capacity, we were sitting at around 2,000 staff complement as the Border Management Authority. Now, additional to that, as you will be aware, we enrolled 200 border guards on the 15th of July, 2022, and then we enrolled another 400 in the 1st of June, 2024. So all in all, we are then sitting with around 600, I will say, conventional law enforcers, which we call border guards in a way that wears the red insignia. but then we are sitting with around 2,000 of specializations. These are immigration specialists, environmental health practitioners in the context of environmental biosecurity experts, agricultural biosecurity experts, together with port health, and that's the complement. Now, according to the Border Management Authority Act, it then gives us the mandate to say you work in the 71 ports of entry. We have outlined them. That's where we stationed and do the work. Additional to that, then the law says you also have to work 10 kilometers from internationally recognized borderline. And there we have to implement all of these laws, immigration laws, agricultural laws, environmental laws, and the like. So basically that is 10-kilometer radius, which effectively means that if somebody crosses the border illegally, that person broke immigration laws. Therefore, the border guards must intercept, must make sure that we do what we call direct deportation. So when the person is intercepted within the border law enforcement area, that person gets brought into the port to be processed, fingerprints taken, declared undesirable, and ultimately deported back to their country. If we intercept a third country national, and that is where the key part comes, in a particular borderline, if we intercept a Pakistan, for example, at the border with Zimbabwe, we can't deport a Pakistani into Zimbabwe. It's not allowed. So what we then do, we then link up with a structure called Immigration Inspectorate in the Department of Home Affairs. This is the structure that is having the mandate legally to operate inside the country. So with the inspectorate, when they arrest people in the country, they take them to a place called Lindela. And by the way, Lindela basically just means a waiting place or something. So they take them there in Krugersdorp. And then when they take them there, then they have to take them through the court processes for them to get what is called the deportation order. And then once they have the deportation order, then they must get the people deported. So how do they deport them? They deport them either on land or on air. I haven't seen much deportation through sea, but actually they deport on air and land. So which basically means that they then bring those people into the port, and then we then process the deportation at the port level for them to be able to exit. Now, in terms of the volumes and all, so that is something that is handled by the Immigration Inspectorate inside the country. And we then get involved when they arrive at the border law enforcement area or the port for deportation. So that is basically the essence. So that is why we actually emphasize this point that if there are people inside the country that are illegal, those people must then be identified, arrested by Immigration Inspectorate, working together with SAPS inside the country, and they get them deported. Our responsibility is to make sure that they don't come back, as it were, a bit here around manpower. When we got this task of having to establish the BMA, having been brought into the Department of Home Affairs, as you will know, in 2021 into 2022, we then developed a business case. And I'm saying these things because they are not secret. They are actually out there in parliamentary conversations. We then did a business case to say, this is what the BMA will require. And in terms of that particular reality, the BMA structure, in terms of its full establishment, in other words, to be kicked in, as it were, for the first year, which was supposed to be 2023, 2024, it was to cost the country 2.9 billion in what we call new money, as it were. That is additional to the 1.4 billion that we got from the departments, of which 89% or so of that is people's salaries that we integrated. Therefore, we are sitting with around 11% in terms of goods and services. Now, when the business case got issued, we had then to get the amount, but unfortunately, as everybody will know, the fiscus being constrained and all of that, we then got 250 million. Now, the 250 million could only got at 400 border guards, additional. That is why we then got the 400 border guards, and we laterally even had to take them to the lower level. That is why we call them junior border guards. So that is basically what we could afford in terms of bringing into the organization. Now, you are asking what kind of manpower do we need and all of that. Our structure as we speak, like I'm saying, that issue is open news, is in the parliamentary platform. We are actually having a structure that requires around 11,000 people, and we are now at 2,600. If I can then answer your question directly. I think I've already broken it down to say 600 is conventional law enforcement, 2,000 are people conventionally in the ports. And by the way, we are supposed to have full contingent of the various specialization across the various ports. Meaning, if you go to Peka Bridge as a port of entry to Lesotho, we only have immigration people. We don't have environmental biosecurity experts. We don't have agricultural biosecurity experts. We don't even have port health officials there. So we only have immigration, and that's it. So automatically you will understand that in terms of environmental health practitioners, out of the 71 ports, we only have them at less than 50% of the ports. In other ports, we have no presence. And that is the reality. So this is what we are talking about from a man/women power that is required. In terms of technology, obviously, we are requiring a bit, and of course, drones becomes one of the critical ones. But I think the issue that we can also indicate here is something that we are grateful for. We did get 150 million last year from CARA, which is Criminal Asset Recovery Account, to be able to procure some of these things. So we basically used that to procure some of the vehicles that we are using for movement around the vulnerable segments at the port, and we've also procured some of the other things that are critical for the tools of trade for the BMA. The only delay, as I've indicated, was the issue of procuring the drones as well as the what they call patrol vessels, others call them speedboats for the coastal guards. And by the way, in terms of the coastal guard, we only have 50. And I think you will know how many harbors do we have. I mean, your Durban harbor, your Cape Town, your Gqeberha, and your all of those kind of ports, your Cape Town harbor. We only have 50. That is why we have put in some 5 there and 6 there and all of those kind of issues. And we know that is another area where there are serious challenges in terms of illegal migration, but also even in terms of the exploitation of our marine resources. So from a resource point of view, there is a lot that is still required. But we do believe that as we go forward, one way or the other, there should be some kind of capacitation of the authority so that we can be able to fulfill our legal mandate, as it were. So, Pito, that is the reality, as it were. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members of the media, in this regard, I think we are coming to the conclusion of the press conference. But before we do that, I'd like to invite our Assistant Commissioner for Corporate Affairs, Mr. Themba Dubazana, to come and officially close the media briefing. We'll have one-on-one interviews after the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Maybe I've started with you. By thanking you for giving me this opportunity. Once again, let me take this opportunity to greet the Commissioner and Chief Executive Officer of the Border Management Authority. I greet the General Chilembe, the Deputy Commissioner for Operations of the BMA,